Now, the Molonglo Group was established in 1964, but it was a very different business back then. Can you tell us about how the company started out?
It started by my father and my uncle, my late uncle. They actually originally started off in mini markets, or what we call smaller suburban supermarkets. And from there it grew into a large kind of chain of supermarkets, wholesaling division, turning over about 280 million. And then that was sold to Woolworths in 1996.
Can you tell us a little bit about your past, where you grew up and how you got involved in the family business?
Well, I've always been involved since I was 13. I've worked in all the different areas. While I was still at school and at university, I worked throughout all the openings of all the new supermarkets in the wholesale division, you know, from stacking shelves to, working in the accounts and admin side of the office. And so I've worked in that and setting up shops, to then moving on to the IT industry after I left university. Like most young Canberrans, I was born in Canberra. I wanted to move to Sydney and Melbourne. That kind of adventure, I went to Sydney for a little bit, not for too long. Then I got pulled back. My father said, look, help us out with this organic food business from there. So I learned a lot more about food, which I must admit, after growing up with food, I didn't want to get back into food. So not that I didn't have a passion for food, and I still do. I mean, in fact, now we're getting back into food in a different kind of way, but which I'll explain a bit later when we talk about New Acton and all the different things we've done now. But so got pulled back into that, and then from there we sort of pushed our way back into, moved away from food and went into developments.
Now, you've mentioned a little bit about it yourself. Your father, Tim, your brother, Nectar, are all directors of the Molonglo Group. Tell us about how that works and how you work together.
Oh, look, it's quite interesting. I mean, a lot of people ask me, what do I do every day? And sometimes it's hard to answer that question. But I think because we've all got different skills and different experiences, we just complement each other. I see myself more as the functional side of things. So if we're looking at a development, I will look at, is this going to work functionally? So, for instance, if you build a hotel, or if you build a restaurant, or you build an office building, is it going to functionally work for the tenant? And then my brother will look more at the artistic side of things, the creative side of things. How do we make this thing look good? And then so we blend those two things together. He might come up with some idea, and I'll say, look, that material looks great, but it's not going to look good, long term, or something like that. So we're going to try and mold, and this is in fact, it's becoming even more important now about the climate change and all those kind of things. When we build things now, we're going to build them to last. It's not like we're going to get away from that throwaway society. So we've got my brother, who's the creative side, incorporate a lot of art into our developments. I look at the functional side of things. I deal with the tenants. He deals also with the finance side of things, his experience with the banks. And I guess my father's just throwing away his experience that he's had, throughout all his business experience, and just moulding us. And actually just not even moulding us, just, he's probably been a teacher, probably one of the best teachers I've had. So, growing up, I mean, he always talked to us about a whole number of different issues when we were growing up, from business to education to, a whole number of things like that. And that's important.
So we've touched on families. Now you've got your own young family, your immediate family, and you have a huge business. How do you manage to sustain a work-life balance?
It's interesting. I actually have to put in days that I in my diary to spend with my wife, and days that I spend with my daughter. And she's only 2.5, but I've made a commitment to her. She probably doesn't know about it, but I've made a commitment to her that I will spend one day a month with her, just her and myself, and I do something with her. So I might take her to the theatre, I might take her to the zoo, I might, whatever that may be. So last week I took her to so it was the day of the month, and I took her to the Gruffalo at the Canberra Theatre. She loved it, so it was good fun.
Now, the Molonglo Group is committed to creating world-class developments that enhance Canberra's role as a great national capital. How do you achieve this?
It's doing four things. One is through design and architecture. One is through incorporating art and culture. The other major thing I think right now is the sustainability side of things. So that's a big focus of ours. So art and culture is one, design and architecture is another, and sustainability is a big thing for us now as well. So we won't build things that aren't green anymore. And we're not talking about lip service, you know, changing a few light bulbs. We're talking about the full hog, you know, looking at lighting, looking at transport around the precinct, looking at material choices, paints, low VOC paints, planting trees, and then teaching people an education thing as well. I mean, when we finish this site here, which we're at our last stage at the moment, we would have planted about 300 trees on this site in a quite a small area, and that doesn't include all the bushes and everything else, you know. So
you also aim to make developments that foster tolerance and diversity. So how do you influence community views through construction in that way?
I think part of it is having community events and working with community institutions such as the National Gallery, the Canberra Symphony Orchestra, QL2, which is a dance organisation for youth, you know, working with musicians, you know, and you know, actually a lot of people think, well, crazy developers, what do you do this? What do you spend this money and why do you do this? We do it, I mean, for one thing, you know, creating sustainable buildings helps us sell apartments, it helps people lease our buildings, and then makes people want to live down here as well. So, and the same with the cultural sort of stuff, people want to live down here because, you know, they want to walk down to their local bar or their local shop or their local, you know, walk across to the lake or listen to some live music, meet their friends in a coffee shop. You know, I mean, I live here as well, and I don't drive. I mean, one of our cars has got 10,000 Ks, and we've had it for 4 years. So, you know, you can see, you know, the amount of time we spend in the car. It's not a lot, and that's important because less time in the car actually means more time face to face with people, and more time with your family, more time with your friends, and more time with colleagues from work or wherever it may be. So,
Nishi is the new commercial and residential project at the new Acton precinct that's due to be completed in 2012. Can you tell us about this building in particular?
Yeah, look, for us it's probably our best development and our most unique and our probably most difficult as well, because we're building the new building for the Department of Climate Change. So it's one of the greenest buildings in the country. It's actually 70% more efficient than a 6-star Green Star building. It is a 6-star Green Star as well. That's the highest rating you can get. And it's a 5-star Neighbours, which is the highest Neighbours rating you can get. The other thing we've incorporated in this year is the cultural element. So we've got Palace Cinemas going in, 800 seats, 8-screen cinema complex. They're probably the largest independent cinema operators in Australia. All digital screens now, so everything's moved digital, which allows them to actually screen films and change films depending on demand. They run all the film festivals around Australia, the Greek, Italian, you know, Spanish. So that's going to bring a lot of cultural elements to the thing, and fantastic for the residences. And there's a new hotel going in there, and for the Department of Climate Change, all the new. So it's going to be quite a hub of activity for us. It's, you know, it will be something that will just really finish off New Acton as a precinct.
Part of the New Acton precinct and the Diamond Hotel tragically went up in flames recently, and reportedly 85% of the restaurant and office complex were ruined in that. How's this affected development in New Acton and the operations of the Molonglo Group?
It's not as bad as that. The Diamond Hotel was closed for a few weeks, really for clean-up. It's reopened now and functioning just as normal. The 3 restaurants, yes, have been affected. One will be open in the next few weeks, so we're hoping mid-August. Bicicletta, the Italian restaurant, which is attached to the hotel, we're open in that sort of time frame, and we'll get people back and dining again. And the Flint restaurant and Parlour Wine Room will probably be open. We'll start a demolition to clean up the site and get that rebuilt hopefully by Christmas or just after Christmas.
Okay, that's great. Where would you like to see the business developing in the distant future?
Look, I think we still have a focus on Canberra because we love Canberra. We're from Canberra. We like to see Canberra change, and it's been fantastic the way it's changed over the last five to 10 years. We're actually maturing. We're becoming a city. We've got more apartments in the city. The density's increasing. The restaurant scene, the coffee scene's improving, and we're getting more tourism as well. I mean, the airport's done a fantastic job. The airport group out there, and I think people are starting to understand that Canberra's got a lot of life and it's got some fantastic institutions. The National Gallery, the Portrait Gallery, the Symphony Orchestra. So for us, this will be our base. Whether we choose to develop things in other states, probably. Yeah, look, we love Melbourne. I mean, we think Melbourne's quite a cultural, cosmopolitan city, and I think, sorry to the Sydney people, but who overtakes Sydney is probably a better city than Sydney will. I just think because of it is a multi. I think it's more culturally developed. I think Sydney's still very monoculture, beautiful scenic wise, but yeah, and I think Canberra's more like Melbourne. People say, oh, what do I compare? Melbourne's got the laneways. We've actually got our little suburbs here, and they're like our laneways. You've got Ainsley shops, you've got O'Connor shops, you've got Griffith shops, and they're fantastic little pockets of Canberra that most tourists don't see because they come to the city, they come for a function or they come for a conference, they go to the city or Manuka, the two established areas, and they don't see what those other pockets have. And I urge everyone who comes to Canberra to explore those little pockets, those centrally located little suburban shopping centres that have actually progressed and changed, into these beautiful little unique coffee and drinking holes. So.
And ironically, that's where the Molonglo group actually began.
Yeah, that's right.
Where can people find out more information on the Molonglo group or the developments here at New Acton Precinct?
Yeah, look, at the moment, probably the best place to go to is newacton.com.au, and that's newacton.com.au. There's also nishi.com.au, but we will be merging all the sites into one, so newacton.com.au is probably the best place, and that can feed you off into the different other areas as well.
Okay, 3 quick questions for you. What kind of car do you drive and why?
I drive my wife and I, we've got a car, it's a Volkswagen Passat. Why do we drive it? It's efficient, fuel efficient, and it's robust. It's going to last for a long time.
If you were no longer in property development, what would you like to see yourself doing?
Probably event management. Yeah.
Probably most importantly, what are the biggest hopes you have for your young children?
Oh, look, that the world improves in a number of ways. One, that we solve the problems to climate change, which I think is quite easy. I think we just got to use our brains that we've got and actually work out a solution. And it's not that difficult. There's not one solution. It's 101 different solutions. Because Malcolm Turnbull, I saw great. There's been a lot of talk about his speech. And the one thing that moved me the most was he said, for us, for the world, climate change is not a matter of, ideology, it's a moral thing. And it is a moral thing because, as he said, the worst people affected are going to be the poor people. So, people in Canberra and Australia will be okay, because we'll have enough money to do what we have to do to cope with those changes. But some people won't. So I think if we can help them out, One day they'll help us up.